Hi everybody, welcome once again, and in today's video I'm going to explain you the concept of IS curve. But before starting with the concept of IS curve, let me remind you that in order to understand the concept of IS curve, you need to be well versed with the concept of goods market equilibrium. Therefore, I have shared a link in the description for the same. The IS curve depicts a set of all levels of interest rate and output at which total investment equals total savings. Equilibrium in the goods market requires that production is equal to demand for goods and services, where demand for goods is equal to consumption plus investment plus government spending, and we have assumed that exports and imports are zero. So demand for goods is a sum of consumption, investment, and government spending. In the earlier video of a linear relation between consumption and income, in this video, we will be using a more general relation to represent consumption in this form. The earlier model, we have assumed investment as constant for the sake of simplicity, but in reality, investment is far from constant, and in fact, here we'll assume that investment depends primarily on sales and interest rate. Investment primarily depends on these two factors. First is level of sales. With increase in sales, the firm may look for buying an additional machine or build an additional plant. So we can say that with increase in sales, there is an increase in investment. But for a firm which is not facing an increase in sales, it may not increase its investment. Similarly, if we talk about interest rate, at higher interest rate, it becomes less attractive for the firm to borrow and to buy a new machine. But at a low interest rate, the firm may invest more. To capture this relation, we can write it in this form, where this Y represents both production and sales, and we continue to assume that inventory investment is zero, and therefore production and sales are always equal. So with increase in production, or basically with increase in sales, investment will increase, and there is basically negative relation of interest rate with investment. When interest rate will increase, it will be costly to borrow, and obviously this will lead to a fall in investment. As you know that production and income are identically equal, the relation between these two is shown with the help of a 45-degree line. Relation between demand and output at a given interest rate is shown by this upward sloping curve Z. By taking into account this investment relation, this equilibrium condition can now be represented as this. At a given interest rate, demand can be treated as an increasing function of output. Increase in output leads to an increase in income, or we can say that it will lead to an increase in disposable income, and with this increase in disposable income, there will be an increase in consumption expenditure. At the same time, increase in output leads to an increase in investment, which we have seen earlier. So overall, this increase in output will lead to increase in aggregate demand. We can say that increase in output through its effect on both consumption and investment leads to an increase in demand. This positive relation between output and demand at a given interest rate is shown by this curve Z. Equilibrium in the goods market is established at point A, where demand for goods is equal to output. Now the initial equilibrium is established at point A. Now suppose that interest rate increases, and with this increase in interest rate, investment will fall. With fall in investment, there will be a fall in this demand curve, and this will shift downwards to a new position, and the equilibrium is now established at this point A1, and there will be a fall in output from Y to Y1. An increase in interest rate decreases investment. This decrease in investment decreases output, which further decreases consumption and investment through multiplier effect. Using this figure, we can find equilibrium level of output associated with any interest rate, and that will help us to get our IS curve. At a lower interest rate, we have this level of output corresponding to point A, and we can represent it as A dash. And at a higher interest rate, we have a lower level of output, and this point A1 in figure 1 corresponds to this point A1 dash at a higher interest rate. In figure 2, at this interest rate, as we can see that with increase in interest rate, there is a fall in the level of output. So a higher interest rate leads to a low level of investment and a fall in demand, and relation between interest rate and output can be shown in the form of IS curve. At higher interest rate, we have a lower level of output, and at a lower interest rate, we have a higher level of output.